Now I have the pleasure of introducing Adam Wolf, the founding principal of Wolf Partners, a vertically integrated development firm based in Tampa, Florida. Adam founded Wolf Partners with a vision of adopting a holistic approach to design and development, integrating his experience in structural engineering, architecture, and development into a cohesive, multidisciplinary method for delivering projects. Since the firm's inception in 2020, Adam and his team have specialized in urban infill multifamily development, utilizing prefabricated light gauge steel construction to provide site-specific design solutions without compromising on quality, speed, or design expression. Adam is a licensed architect holding a bachelor's degree in computer graphics technology from Purdue University and a master's degree in architecture from the Illinois Institute of Technology. Before founding Wolf Partners, his career spanned multiple disciplines, including structural engineering, architecture, and development. In each field, he leveraged parametric solutions to better understand the variables impacting the final product and to make processes more repeatable and efficient. And as a Division I football player, his athletic ability, his design and engineering background are all contributing to the success of Wolf Partners.
Thank you all for being here. Funny story about Purdue. I was kindly asked to switch majors to maintain eligibility, and I ended up in computer graphics with a focus on construction graphics, and my first class was the first release of Revit. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I had no idea then that it was going to take up the next 15 years of my life, but here we are. The 3D architectural model that we produce as architects, pretty much every project has behind it a Revit model, and certainly every project I've worked on in my career has that, and it's basically a digital twin of what's to be built in the real world. It's packed, it's very robust, it's got all the detail, all the forethought, all the clash detection, pre-construction coordination embedded into this model. And inevitably, we as architects take a lot of time and care to get that right. And ultimately, it does get sliced into 2D drawings. And throughout my career, I always felt that there was something lost in translation, going from this one-to-one digital twin, and then only for it to be sliced into a standard set of construction documents that sometimes get misinterpreted on site, sometimes don't get looked at on site. And we set out to figure out a way to take that 3D, highly refined, highly robust digital model and actually translate it from the digital realm to the physical in a way that we weren't going to be losing our ability to create novel design expressions for each specific project. And for us, we wanted to create a solution, a prefabricated solution that wasn't contingent upon a repeatable output, but rather, or a modular expression, but rather consider all the building elements and components as their own set of modules that we can reconfigure so we can deliver architectural solutions to each site given the unique characteristics of that site. So here at Wolf Partners, we are a development firm, an architecture practice, and a fabrication facility rolled into one with the idea in mind to create that kind of mass customization across our projects. Here we have our amazing team. They're over here, most of them, and it's an interdisciplinary team comprised of architects, interior designers, fabrication specialists, our capital partners, land acquisition and sales team, and I couldn't be more proud of the work that we're going to share with you today and the work that they've produced and all the effort that they've put in to get us to where we are from where we started. Doing this urban infill multifamily development really starts with analyzing the site. And I know this is kind of development 101, but when we look at a site, we really only have control over a certain set of variables. That being, what are we going to pay for the land? How many units are we going to put on it? What size are those units going to be? And to a certain degree, what it's going to cost to build. Unlike multifamily or apartments where you establish a unit mix or single-family home development, it's critical that we think of these sites as a one-off, and a lot of times the viability of a development project relies on how creative can we get with the zoning configuration, the plan development, and oftentimes we have to rely on coming up with a new unit design for each site so that we can go forward. And in doing so, I'm going to run through some of our site plans, and you can see each project is configured quite differently based on the unique conditions of the site, and we'll get into some of these later. But the intent is that we can respond appropriately in scale and context to each one of these development sites and build that 3D digital model, that digital twin, but then run through a standardized fabrication process with the Howick machines so that we can create unique architectures across projects that are very contextual and very appropriate in scale and materiality and style for each given site. And so what you end up with is a couple of our completed projects here that have different architectural styles, very much in keeping with what's adjacent in their neighborhoods and surrounding areas, and some of them quite different from others. And so the idea of this mass customization is we take that site-driven development, configure what the site plan as it needs to make that development pro forma work, but also serve the community best. All that design stuff happens over here. Once it crosses that wall into our fabrication shop, that process doesn't change. It's kind of agnostic to what the final project will be in terms of style, context, building type. But we're working on standardizing that fabrication process as a means to maintain creativity and architectural expression across our projects. So a little bit of our timeline, we started back in 2020, and the idea was that we needed to kind of build a project pipeline to figure out this system. It's a new system to us, and before offering it to the market at large, we wanted to scrape our knees and figure out all the inherent problems that we don't even know yet before we get to that point. And so we spent the first 18 months or so acquiring land, going to neighborhood meetings, going to city council hearings, rezoning, all with the intent of finally getting to the point where we can get into production. And we tried to time our machine orders from Howick with our first permit being issued, and we got it wrong, as happens. So we started making furniture after we got our machines. So the first thing we rolled was this conference table. We were pretty pumped about it. And then we thought, surely permits are going to be issued. Didn't happen, so we made a reception desk. And then we really started running out of ideas, so we made a logo wall. But finally, we had our first project permit issued here. It's a 9-unit deal in Tampa Heights, consisting of 2 unit types. And here's the time lapse of that production. It's all 3 stories, for sale, townhomes. And here behind us, you can see the mock-up that we built, trying to solve that mansard truss and a couple of other key details there. So there's in production, and there's the final photo. That was completed about a year ago, and a shot of the interiors. Next project is a 7-unit project in Hyde Park, and if you don't know, Hyde Park is one of probably the most affluent neighborhoods and desirable neighborhoods in Tampa, and it called for a much different design response. We could have put 9 of that oak unit type here, but we thought that decreasing the unit count and offering a larger product would be more appropriate for this neighborhood. And then it's also in the historic district of Hyde Park, so there was a whole extra set of review, and so we landed on this kind of modern take on Mediterranean. We designed that kind of canted arch without really knowing how to fabricate it, so that was a unique design challenge. Within those 7 units, there are 3 unique unit types as a means to just have a more diverse offering to the public. Here's the entry foyer, the living room, double height living room, kitchen. We have a lofted area up there above the living room, the master bath, and finally the framing model. This was by far the first project. The oak framing model was quite complex. This one even had more complexity. As you can see here, we had to build that mock-up of the archways to try to come up with a way to get that double curving surface out of standard stick parts. And so we built those arches in 2 pieces here in the shop, delivered them to the site. And we're proud of how this turned out, but I think that it might have looked cooler before we put sheathing on it for a little bit. And we've got a time lapse of that. Our framing crew consisted of 5 framers, 1 foreman included in that 5, and it's about 23,000 gross square feet that they were able to build. So they did it in 70 working days to top out fully sheathed. The entire project from start to finish was about 16 months. And here you have some photos of the completed project. It was just completed about 2 months ago. One of our upcoming projects is 80 units in Beach Park, and I'd like to share, this is snippets of our presentation, our second presentation to the Neighborhood Association. This project is interesting in that that parcel had been before City Council 3 times prior by 3 different developers. Each time they didn't get the support of the Neighborhood Association. So our first order of business, as we often do, is to go talk to the neighborhood and figure out what their concerns are, what their desires are, and what they'd like to see on that site, and try to cater to that community and really make a positive impact rather than kind of thrust our own intent on a project. After our first meeting, we reduced the unit count from 87 to 80. We increased the setbacks. They were very concerned about privacy along this east perimeter. Reconfigured the buildings to create a less dense total site, increased the green space. We have 6 different unit types across this project. All the perimeter is the 3-story product, and then in the interior is the 4-story product. In order to maintain the existing neighbors' privacy, we oriented the rooftop balconies to have views away from the existing homes so we could be as light of an impact on their existing conditions as possible. Added extra parking that wasn't required, landscape buffers. Again, the neighbors to the east were very concerned about having new 3-story buildings overlooking into their backyards. And so we coordinated our architecture with clerestory windows to kind of block those view corridors, both on the 2nd floor and on the 3rd, by recessing that bedroom, elevating a parapet so that those existing homeowners can maintain their privacy. And after having worked with this association, they came in full support at City Council, and we were able to move forward. And here's a few of the renderings of that project, slated to start beginning of Q2 2025. And Palm Park South is on South MacDill, just on the southern tip by the Air Force Base. This project, or this site plan, was driven by grand trees, if you can believe it. The neighborhood association was very concerned that a lot of developers were coming in and basically decimating their existing forests. And they said, we will not support your project if you touch the trees. And said, okay, we won't. And that led to a different site plan and arrangement that we wouldn't have otherwise probably organically chosen. But with those constraints came some creativity. So we have this staggered building type. And once we kind of offset each building from one another, we realized that we were so far set back to stay away from the trees, but we still had a little bit of room. So we decided to take each unit sequentially and increase the length where we had it by a 16-inch standard joist or stud bay in an area that wouldn't be impactful to to the overall, coordination of bathrooms and things like that. All right, one last project to touch on, the Motor Enclave. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's just outside of town. It's best described as a country club for car enthusiasts. So you can buy car condos and store whatever types of exotic cars you have. There's a 1.8-mile racetrack associated with it. There's a dirt track behind. And we were approached by the developer who had a pool bar and grill slated to be designed out of shipping containers. They utilize shipping containers in some of the site. It was going to be too costly for them, so they said, can you redo this out of your system? We said, surely, but those dimensions weren't really right for the program that was going to be contained within them, so we decided to combine both the bathroom and back of house with the bar, grill, and laundry area, but still maintain that same kind of shipping container aesthetic with a slight carve out. And Scott Mitchell, who you're going to be hearing from next, which is going to be a fantastic presentation, I'm sure, was gracious enough to work with us to come up with this ceiling expression. We wanted to kind of emulate the movement and flow of cars racing around a track. And so Scott helped us use his stud finder software to create this design expression. And we needed to tie it somehow to the actual site. So we took the curvature of the first turn of that racetrack and basically projected it up onto the ceiling to become the apex of those trusses. So there was some relation to the site, and it wasn't just somewhat arbitrary, cool expression. And here we have that under construction and the completed project. So I'm about to wrap up, but I wanted to share this. When we had this idea back in 2020, this was one of our pitch deck slides of taking unique design solutions, a standardized fabrication process into the built product. Those circles and processes are blank for a reason, because we did not know what the projects were going to be. We didn't know how to figure out the process, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to build those projects. It was just kind of a pipe dream at that time, but we had a great family investment to come in that had experience in the manufacturing space. They're unable to be here today, unfortunately. We surely haven't figured it all out. We're still working the kinks out, but we've got to do some really exciting projects. We do have a process that is working for the most part, and we've built some multifamily, we've built some townhomes, and the last thing that we have is a new single family coming on board. It's in the design phase right now, but we'll be starting that this year as well. Thank you very much. Do you have questions?
What was the learning curve,
So we had kind of our fabrication side working with Howick, getting up to speed on the machines, and they've been absolutely fantastic with that. And then we worked with Jonathan Fox at Argos and Vertex PD. And the learning curve is to get the software working out of the box, good to go, to then make sure that it's customized to fit all of our needs. We spent some time developing those wall types and then translating the structural engineering drawings to the architectural model and making sure that we had everything in the right spot. It was about a 2-month process before we actually hit print and started going on site. But since then, Jonathan and his team have been working to continue to develop our standard methods of practice. And right now we've got a pretty good library of, typical details and what not to do's, also what to do's. But that's ever evolving, and we're always trying to keep building on that repertoire of, knowledge that we've accrued. Okay, that's a great question. We looked at pretty much everything out there. We even looked at other methods like, SIPs or 3D printed concrete. The idea first was that breaking down a building into its kit of parts, meaning the framing elements, and being able to wield those and reconfigure those in a manner that we can maintain that agility in design, both in building type and style. But then the real thing that was the winner for us with Howick was that you can communicate with them from multiple software platforms. And we wanted to not have our potential for innovation kind of stifled or encumbered by having to communicate through one means with the machines. And so we've been able to use the Vertex PD, we've been able to use Stud Finder, and for us that was the real winning ticket, so that we could try to innovate as much as possible. The question was, why did we choose these specific models of machines? Yeah. We wanted to stick with the standard residential dimensions so that the follow-on trades would not be so foreign. So the 5600s were definitely the choice. And then we were a little bit hesitant to use those to create trusses as well. And we saw the 7800 and the joist machine and all the efficiencies that comes with that, the inherent lack of potential for squeaking. We thought that there might be too many connections on those standard trusses. And then also just the depth of the plenum space that you're able to get. There's efficiencies to be gained there. And so that was kind of the intent, that we could also achieve better spans, more cantilevers, things like that with the solid joist. Yeah, so when we started, we actually were the contractor on these projects as well. We've since pivoted to utilize third-party contractors, specifically as we scale into these larger projects. The scaling a construction practice from a 10-unit deal to an 80-unit deal is daunting, to say the least. Our capital partners have experience in the manufacturing, the window manufacturing space, and that's what they came from for the last 20 years, so they brought a lot of know-how. And then our COO, Jason, had a lot of experience with the same kind of window manufacturing, so bringing in those crucial roles, because I certainly don't have experience in that area, was very pivotal for us to be able to move fast and accurately.